In high school, I had two close buddies, James and Robert. We spent a lot of time together. When we graduated, James had to relocate with his family to Marfa, Texas, because of his father's job. After settling in, Robert and I were invited to visit him at his new home for a weekend. Out of boredom, we began hiking in the nearby forest and countryside, where we discovered a picturesque river. It was so lovely and serene, but we got lost along the way. To find our way back, we chose to stick with the river, even though we weren't sure which way was upstream or downstream. Without any signs of civilization and no sounds around, we started to worry about reaching out to James' parents for help. Unfortunately, there were no paved roads or streets nearby to find assistance. As we continued along the river, we stumbled upon an ancient church, like structure constructed with weathered red bricks. There was a dirt parking lot and a dirt road leading up to it. The place was surrounded by thick bushes and overgrown vegetation. Curious, we entered to check if anyone was there and inquire about using their phone to find our way. Outside, we spotted 5 old cars, possibly Toyotas from the 70s or 80s, sitting in the dirt parking lot with flat or missing tires. The cars looked quite dirty and rusted. All 5 cars were parked in a row. All of them used to be black in color. As we approached, we heard gospel music and singing coming from inside the old and rundown church. We were glad to find people there, so we entered the church, which seemed quite old. Peeking inside, we saw around 20 or so people dressed in their best clothes, although it was evident they were not well off. Once we entered, the elderly lady with white hair and horn-rimmed glasses who was playing the piano stopped abruptly and stared at us expressionlessly. Something unforgettable happened next. Every person in the church stopped singing, set aside their song sheets, and turned their heads to look at us with vacant and unwelcoming glares. It left a lasting impression on me, and I'll never forget that moment. James apologized, saying we needed to use their phone to call for help. Nobody uttered a word. The church was eerily quiet, with only the sound of creaking pews. We decided to retreat slowly, backing out of the door, letting it close, quietly. Filled with a sense of foreboding fear, we exchanged looks and left the place quietly. We began walking along the dirt road, and Brian pointed out that there were no crosses or Christian symbols inside the church. As we glanced back, we noticed about a dozen men had come out of the church and were standing attentively, observing us as we walked on the road. Their watchful gaze made us feel uneasy. This scared us, and we started running up the dirt road for what seemed like a long time. Eventually, we reached an ancient, rundown gas station that resembled those full-service stations from the past. Inside, the shelves were mostly empty and covered in dust. There, we saw an old man with an excessively tanned complexion, wearing a greasy baseball cap, engrossed in reading a weathered book with yellowed pages. He glanced at us and asked if we were lost. Then, he kindly instructed, "Head back the way you came and turn left at the road. Follow it until you spot a telephone pole. Then take a right onto the trail, and it will lead you to a highway." We thanked him and left swiftly, walking towards the telephone pole as he had guided us. Once more, we glanced back, and the old man stood in front of the gas station, arms folded, wearing a creepy grin with a rotten tooth. We reached the telephone pole, turned right, and followed the trail to the nearest highway as he directed. After about 30 minutes of walking in the fading light, it became dark when we arrived at the highway. We attempted to flag down a few passing cars, but no one stopped to help. We were relieved when a police officer noticed us and stopped to assist. We explained that we were lost and provided Jason's address. The officer reacted with surprise, whistling at our predicament. It took around 30 minutes for him to drive us back to James' place. During the conversation, he warned us to be cautious in those woods, mentioning there were some eccentric witch people in the area. In a small town, nestled amidst ancient woods, stood the ominous St. Mark's Church. Rumors of unexplained phenomena haunted the villagers, and tales of a malevolent spirit that lurked within the church spread like wildfire. One fateful night, a group of daring teenagers gathered in the abandoned church, eager to summon the spirit using an Ouija board, as the moon cast an eerie glow on the desolate church. Emily, Alex, Sarah, and Jake gathered around the Ouija board. Their trembling fingers hovered over the planchette, ready to make contact with the unknown. With bated breath, they called out to the spirit, their voices echoing through the empty halls. To their astonishment, the planchette moved, seemingly guided by an unseen force. It spelled out chilling messages, warning the teenagers to leave or face dire consequences. Unfazed by the ominous warnings, they continued their communication with the spirit, their curiosity outweighing their fear. Suddenly, the atmosphere in the church grew icy cold, and a sinister laughter reverberated, chilling them to their core. In the flickering candlelight, they saw a shadowy figure materialize before their eyes. Its glowing eyes bore into their souls, filling them with dread. They gasped, paralyzed by the terrifying presence that had manifested in front of them. The spirit's voice boomed, recounting its tragic past, a tale of betrayal and a gruesome end within the very walls of the church. The teenagers realized they had awakened a malevolent entity, one seeking revenge from beyond the grave. As the spirit's anger intensified, the Ouija board's letters scrambled, spelling out ominous threats. Fear consumed them, and they desperately tried to close the connection, but the planchette refused to move. The malevolent spirit had them trapped. In a desperate attempt to escape, they dashed towards the church's exit, only to find the door slammed shut, sealing them inside with the vengeful entity. Panic set in as the spirit's presence grew more malevolent, toying with their minds. Sarah, the most courageous of the group, bravely stepped forward. She reached into her bag and pulled out a necklace with a symbol of protection. Holding it aloft, she recited an ancient incantation, attempting to banish the malevolent spirit. As she spoke the words, the church trembled, and the malevolent spirit roared in anger. The ground beneath them shook violently, threatening to swallow them whole. The friends clung to each other, their courage waning. Just as all seemed lost, the necklace emitted a brilliant light, pushing back the malevolent presence. The spirit shrieked and dissipated into the darkness, leaving behind an eerie silence. Exhausted but triumphant, the friends stumbled out of the church, finding the doors wide open as if inviting them to escape. The Ouija board lay discarded, a reminder of the darkness they had faced. From that night on, the villagers spoke of St. Mark's Church with a newfound sense of trepidation. The malevolent spirit had been vanquished, but its haunting tale lived on, a cautionary reminder to never meddle with forces beyond their understanding. And so, the church stood as a grim testament to the supernatural, its secrets locked away, waiting for the brave or foolish to uncover its haunting mysteries once more. Once upon a time, in a small, eerie town nestled among the darkened woods, stood an ancient, desolate church. The locals whispered of its haunting history, saying that once every century, a terrifying ritual took place inside those crumbling walls. It was a moonless night, when 5 curious teenagers decided to investigate the ghostly tales. Adam, the brave one, led the way. Sarah, his girlfriend, clutched his arm tightly, while Tim, Rachel, and Mark followed closely behind. As they stepped inside, the air grew icy, and the faint sound of chanting echoed through the dimly lit halls. Unfazed, Adam pressed on, determined to uncover the truth. But the deeper they ventured, the stronger the sense of foreboding became. In the heart of the church, they discovered a hidden chamber with strange symbols etched on the walls. In its center lay an ominous altar, adorned with flickering candles. Fear gnawed at their hearts, but their curiosity pushed them forward. Whispers filled the air, and the candles danced wildly. Suddenly, a ghostly figure emerged from the shadows, sending shivers down their spines. The spirit's eyes gleamed with malevolence, and a chilling voice spoke. "You have trespassed into forbidden territory. Now you must partake in the ritual or face eternal torment." Frozen with fear, the teenagers hesitated, but the ghostly entity gave them no choice. The ritual requires a sacrifice. It demanded, "One of you must willingly offer a drop of blood." Terrified, they drew lots, and it was decided that Rachel would be the one. With trembling hands, she pricked her finger and let a drop of blood fall onto the altar. The room trembled, and the candles blazed brighter, casting eerie shadows on the walls. The ghostly figure then handed them a worn, ancient book and commanded them to read the incantations inscribed within. As they stumbled through the strange words, the air grew thicker, and a sense of impending doom engulfed them. Outside the church, thunder roared, and rain poured down like tears from the heavens. The elements seemed to mirror the turmoil within. The ritual had awakened something malevolent, something beyond their comprehension. A dark mist enveloped them, and the spirit's chilling laughter filled the room. Suddenly, Mark let out a blood-curdling scream as he was lifted into the air by an unseen force. Panic. Stricken, the others tried to flee, but the doors slammed shut, trapping them inside. The ghostly figure revealed its sinister plan: to consume the souls of those who dared to intrude. Panic consumed them, and the only hope of escape was to complete the ritual. The teenagers struggled to regain their focus, reading the incantations with fervor as the room filled with an otherworldly glow. With every word, the malevolent spirit's grip weakened. The ancient book shook in their hands, and the symbols on the walls flickered and dimmed. As the last words left their lips, a blinding light burst forth, banishing the ghostly figure back into the shadows. The rain outside ceased, and the doors swung open, releasing the teens from their terrifying ordeal. They stumbled out of the church, gasping for breath, their hearts pounding like thunder. From that day on, the church stood in silence once more, its secrets buried deep within its ancient walls. The teenagers vowed never to speak of that night, but the memory haunted their dreams for years to come. And so, the legend of the haunted church and its chilling ritual continued to be whispered in hushed tones, a reminder of the darkness that lurked in the shadows and the terrifying power of the unknown. During my time as a Cub Scout, we used to have our meetings at a Catholic elementary school. They would take place either in the gym or in nearby rooms. I was around 8 years old back then, and it made me feel uneasy. But let me start from the beginning, before I explain why I'm sharing this. A few days ago, I went to church with my mom and brother, just like we did every other week. We were usually late, so we sat in the back or stood by the doors if no seats were available. On that day, we chose to sit in the back corner, Mom and my brother went into the pew before me. I took the seat on the end. While the Mass was going on, I saw an older man with glasses and a white mustache standing by the wall to my left, looking at me. When I looked his way, he smiled, but his weird and creepy expression made me feel uneasy. I was 8 years old, not a little kid anymore. It just didn't feel right and made me uncomfortable. I tried my hardest to look away, but he kept glancing at me every few seconds. When I glanced back, he made another strange face, probably trying to be funny, but it just seemed odd once more. My mom noticed and nudged me, whispering to ignore him. I think she gave him a mean look too. The next time I looked over, the man wasn't there anymore. He had moved somewhere else. After I went up for communion and returned to my seat, the man was back in that spot, staring at me with a smile until I sat down. My mom noticed it again, and since we received communion, we decided to leave. On our way out, my mom said she didn't like how that guy was looking at us, especially me. Moving ahead to when scouts became part of the picture. Near the end of our gatherings, we'd have fun contests or games. On this particular day, we had a scavenger hunt. The items we had to find were all related to scouting, like a first aid kit, a rope, a flashlight, and so on. We formed 2 teams and each got a list. The team that found the most items would win. We split up and searched everywhere, from the gym to the cafeteria and nearby rooms. I was running through rooms and small hallways I hadn't seen before, trying to find the items on the list. I wasn't having any success. Later, I ended up in a small, narrow hallway near the kitchen in the back of the cafeteria. There was an ice cream fridge filled with ice pops. I checked inside for the items, but found nothing. Then, I got a bit sneaky and decided to take one of the ice pops. As I took the ice pop, I heard a man's voice nearby. I turned and saw the same man from the church a few days ago, coming towards me with a smile. He warned me not to let others see me taking it. Then, he closed the fridge and took my hand, saying he had better treats in the back where kids couldn't go. I managed to pull my hand away from him, feeling scared. He grabbed my wrist tightly, and I was frightened. He tried to quiet me down, but I yelled for help. When he let go, I ran back to the gym and told the Cub Master what had happened. Luckily, the Cub Master was a kind and caring man. Probably because he was a dad too. He informed my mom about the situation. I informed my mom that it was the same man from the church, and my Cub Master promised to assist her in reporting him. We later discovered that he actually worked for the church and lived on its grounds, which explained why he was there. What's upsetting is that allegations surfaced from another child's parents, accusing him of inappropriate touching. It's really gross to think about what he had in mind. If I had gone with him, I can guess his bad intentions. I'm not sure if he went to jail, but the church stopped associating with him after that.